Imagine yourself in a candlelit chamber, the faint flicker of flame dancing across parchment maps sprawled before you. A soft hush surrounds you only, the gentle rustle of papers and the distant toll of a clock as pendulum breaking the silence. Tonight, we embark on a tranquil journey back to the year 1752, to a moment when the seemingly simple turn of a calendar sparked uproar across Britain. In this episode of Boring History for Sleep, we explore the lost 11 days, when Britain raged over a calendar change. We will wander through the hushed corridors of time, tracing the slow drift of seasons, the careful calculations of court astronomers, and the surprising fury of ordinary people who felt their very days were being stolen. Allow your mind to settle into the rhythm of this tale. Let the soft cadence of history soothe you, as you imagine the scent of old manuscripts, the distant cry of church bells, and the gentle turning of time itself. Together, we'll glide through 4 serene segments, each one a whisper of the past, guiding you ever closer to restful slumber. Picture Europe in the late 16th century. The air is thick with the scent of burning tallow in street lanterns, and the evening breeze carries the soft murmur of church choirs drifting from stone steeples. Yet beneath this tranquil veil, scholars were puzzling over a quiet problem. The calendar was slipping. Imagine you are in ancient Rome, nearly 2 millennia ago. The city hums with trade along the Tiber, and legionaries march in precise formation. In 46 BCE, Julius Caesar, advised by the astronomer decrees a new calendar to replace the old lunar system. 12 months are fixed, and every 4 years, an extra day is added to February. The people of Rome, farmers, artisans, merchants, soon learn to mark their lives by this steady cycle of months. Yet the stars above tell a different story. As you gaze upward on a clear Mediterranean night, the constellations appear to drift ever so slightly against the seasons. Over centuries, that small drift accumulates about 1 day every 128 years. By the 1500s, spring festivals meant to celebrate the vernal equinox arrived days too late. The rhythm of life, planting, harvest, holy days grows subtly. Fast forward to Rome in 1582. The marble halls of the Vatican echo with hushed debate. Pope Gregory XIII, mindful of both the slow calendar drift and the desire for uniformity in Christendom's holy days, commissions a reform. Imagine the whisper of quills on vellum as scholars draft the new rules. Leap year tweak. Centuries divisible by 100 would not be leap years, unless also divisible by 400 date jump. To realign the equinox, 10 days would be omitted. October 4th would be followed immediately by October 15th. Consider the quiet astonishment in Italian towns when church bells rang on the new October 5th. Farmers at market stalls, still calculating rents by the old calendar, glanced at each other in gentle confusion. Yet, by and large, the change passed with little unrest, perhaps because it was decreed from the heart of Catholic Europe and enforced quietly by local clergy. Now, drift northward in your mind's eye to fog-laden British lanes, where the air is cool and carries the faint aroma of peat smoke. In England, the old Julian rhythms still beat steadily. The lodestone of tradition holds firm, whether lore passed from parent to child, planting guides etched in timber farmhouses, and centuries of church records marking feast days by Julian dates. For nearly 170 years, Britain watches continental neighbors slip their calendars forward by 10 days, but remains unmoved. Imagine walking along cobblestones at dawn, the cry of seagulls from a nearby harbor blending with the creak of merchant ships unloading grain. Merchants and mariners chart voyages by the Julian reckoning. To shift now would require rewriting almanacs, confusing contracts, and unsettling the pattern of life itself. Picture a quiet astronomy tower at Greenwich. Inside, the air smells faintly of oiled brass instruments and smoothed paper charts. Astronomers, guided by meticulous observations of lunar shadows and solar angles, calculate that skipping 11 days, not 10, will realign Britain with the true solar year by 1752. The extra day accounts for the difference accumulated since 1582. You can almost hear the soft ticking of clocks as numbers are crunched, tables are drawn, and proposals drafted. Yet these changes remain confined to parchment script, distant, not yet vital to the daily lives of bakers, blacksmiths, or school teachers in London towns and Welsh valleys. Take a moment now to feel the weight of those 11 lost days. Close your eyes briefly and imagine tracing your finger along a printed calendar, skipping across blank spaces where dates once stood. Notice how your breath slows as you contemplate time, itself a human construct shaped by stars, politics, and quiet consensus. Soon, we will step into the streets of 1752, where the theory of missing days collides with the rhythm of everyday life. But for now, let the soft hush of history settle around you like a warm blanket. As morning mist drapes the moors and dew glistens on thatched rooftops, the Act of Parliament is proclaimed. Come Wednesday, September 2nd, 1752. The next calendar page will read Thursday, September 14th. 11 dates, September 3rd through 13, will vanish from British life. For many, this feels less like distant astronomy and more like an affront to daily routine. Imagine yourself seated at a simple wooden table, the grain warm under your palms, while a neighbor reads aloud from the parish notice. Whispered questions ripple through the crowd. What of our rents, our wages, our birthdays? In quiet kitchens, by hearth fires, housewives pause in kneading dough, uncertain if their weekly market day has been erased. In rural villages and bustling towns alike, the news spreads slowly at first, by word of mouth over the garden fence, in the clatter of pottery brought to the well, and in the measured rings of church bells. At market squares, farmers exchange concerned glances as they weigh grain against coin. Shopkeepers scratch notes in ledgers, wondering if account books must be read. One morning in Exeter, a group of local laborers gathers outside the guild. The air is cool, tinged with the scent of damp stone and lime wash. The workers' hands calloused from scythe and plow hold placards carved in haste. Give us back our time, and 11 days stolen. Their voices rise, not in anger, but in a low, measured chant that echoes off the ancient walls. Picture the slow build of their protest. A dozen men at first, then 50, then 100. As townsfolk pause their routines to watch, a blacksmith pauses at his forge, hammer in midair, drawn by the solemn parade. A baker leaves loaves to cool, following the procession with a curious eye. Yet even amid the indignation, their footsteps tread softly on the cobbles, as though mindful of waking the very stones beneath them. Word of the Exeter protest drifts inland to larger towns, Bristol, Manchester, and eventually London itself. In stately town halls, local magistrates convened emergency sessions. Candles flicker atop council tables as officials debate petitions bearing hundreds of signatures. Each name, carefully scrawled, represents a life unsettled by missing days. Meanwhile, in smoky coffee houses, where merchants and scholars sip bitter brews from china cups, the conversation turns both fanciful and practical. You can almost taste the steam rising from a porcelain cup as gentlemen in knee breeches lean forward, murmuring, "If September 3rd simply vanished, what of our debts due then? Can I demand my rent for a day that never was? Surely Parliament cannot silence time itself." Gentle laughter ripples under hushed tones, but beneath it lies genuine unease. The operators of stagecoaches accustomed to strict schedules fear passengers will vanish, along with the dates. Postal carriers worry that letters dispatched on the missing days might never arrive. Even midwives, whose records mark births by date, fret that newborn infants will slip through the annals of time. Amid mounting petitions, King George II, seated in the quiet calm of Kensington Palace, receives delegations of concerned citizens. The hallways smell of polished wood and fresh parchment. Courtiers in powdered wigs recite the reasons. Astronomical drift, religious unity, and the desire to match continental neighbors. In a measured proclamation, the Crown offers reassurance. Contracts dated in the lost period will be legally deemed to have occurred on September 2nd or September 14th, as appropriate. Rent and wages will be deeds and birth registrations quietly adjusted. Legal scholars draft explanatory pamphlets, printed in modest batches, and distributed in market towns. Each leaflet bears gentle headings like "Your time restored" and "No loss to your ledger." Imagine the soft weight of one such pamphlet in your hand, the slight texture of uncoated paper, the ink faintly fragrant of vegetable dye. Readers trace each line, comforted by phrases promising that no one need fear the disappearance of their earnings or their birthdays. Yet royal assurances do not soothe every heart. In small villages, where tradition runs deeper than court decrees, pockets of resistance persist. In Somerset, a local squire hosts an informal gathering at his manor. Lanterns cast amber pools of light on stone walls, as tenants sip weak ale from pewter mugs. Tales circulate of villagers refusing to acknowledge the new calendar altogether, continuing to sow fields and celebrate festivals by the old reckoning, as if the Parliament's Act were an unwelcome stranger at their door. During one evening in a hamlet near Bath, women embroider samplers marking the date in quaint verse. 11 days departed, yet our lives endure. God's sun still rises, on fields both lost and sure. Each stitch, fine and deliberate, becomes a quiet act of defiance and remembrance. The hum of the spinning wheel blends with soft murmurs of prayer, grounding the community in rhythms older than statutes. As these murmurs of protest swell quietly across Britain, consider how time, so precise in theory, becomes fluid in practice, shaped by human concern and collective memory. Imagine the hush that falls when church clocks strike 4, though some insist they strike only 3, lost in the void between September days. Soon, we will follow one particular farmer, whose own calendar confusion yields both small tragedy and gentle humor. But before we wander into those fields and furrows, take a moment to let your breath grow slow and even, like the steady tick of a grandfather clock. Imagine the first light of dawn slipping over rolling fields in rural Kent. A soft mist clings to the furrows, and the earth is cool beneath your boots. You walk alongside Thomas Blythe, a seasoned farmer whose family has tilled these lands for generations. His broad straw hat is damp with dew, and the quiet call of skylarks drifts overhead. In Thomas's world, the turning of the seasons is as certain as the waxing and waning of the moon. Seed catalogs, hand-printed almanacs, bound in coarse leather advice that peas be sown in early September, carrots in mid-October, and winter wheat just before All Saints' Day. In 1752, Thomas consults his almanac, as usual. But the calendar has leaped forward 11 days. Picture Thomas's weathered hands cracking open a packet of pea seeds. He glances at the date. September 14, then, at the almanac's recommendation. Plant peas on the 4th day of the month. With a firm nod, he begins casting the seeds into the tilled rows, mistaking the new date for the old. To him, September 14th has become his September 3rd. The soil, still warmed by late summer sun, welcomes the seeds. The earthy aroma rises, thick with promise. Thomas pats the ground with gentle pressure, smoothing the furrows. He hums a quiet tune in old folk melody his mother once sang, and then moves on to turnips and cabbages, each crop following the familiar sequence laid down by centuries of farming lore. Weeks pass under gentle skies. The vines grow tentatively, leaves unfurling in soft green wisps. But as autumn deepens, Thomas notices something amiss. The peas emerge skinny and sparse, their pods underfilled. The turnips sit too close to frost, their skins pitted by the early chill. Winter wheat, planted on what should have been late October, sprouts prematurely in warmer soil. One misty morning, Thomas stoops to inspect the rows. He brushes wet soil from a pale pea pod and frowns at its stunted shape. The air is cool, the distant caw of crows echoing through half-bare trees. A quiet confusion settles in his chest. Had he misread the sky? Or had the calendar itself deceived him? In the weeks that follow, neighbors whisper of similar woes. In a nearby hamlet, Mrs. Cartwright's potatoes rotted before harvest. In another field, Mr. Hawthorne's barley ripened unevenly, some stalks already brittle with frost, others still soft with late-season warmth. Across the county, uneasy glances followed the crooked rows, as though the land itself has lost its guiding rhythm. Thomas, determined to understand, seeks counsel from his father, John Blythe, a man whose memory stretches back to the days before any calendar change. They meet near a gnarled oak at the field's edge. Its bark thick with lichen, the scent of moss sharp in the air. Our planting days have shifted, Thomas says, voice low in the hush of dawn. The almanac says one thing, but the soil tells another. John lays a calloused hand on his son's shoulder. His eyes, pale and steady, scan the horizon. Time is as much a crop as any we sow, he says. You cannot bind it to ink and paper alone. You must listen to the land. Together, they walk the fields, observing subtle signs. The tilt of the sun through cloud cover, the thickness of morning frost, and the behavior of insects among the leaves. They recalibrate their planting by scent and soil warmth, returning, in a sense, to traditions older than any calendar. When spring arrives, Thomas's fields are a tapestry of cautious green. He has replanted, bit by bit, guided by the earth rather than dates. The peas, now sown in warmed ground, at the true season's turn, yield plump pods. The barley stands tall and golden under mild winds. And though the harvest is modest, it tastes richer for the lessons learned. Imagine gathering these crops at dusk. The sky awash with lavender light, the soft thud of full sacks of grain, and the faint song of night insects beginning their evening chorus. In that moment, Thomas realizes that time, while mapped on calendars, is most faithfully measured by the cycles of nature itself. Through Thomas's story, we see how human customs and natural rhythms can fall out of step when modern reforms ripple through centuries of tradition. Yet, just as he adapted, we too find our path when familiar guides shift beneath us. Soon, we will explore how the calendar change touched even the grandest halls of society, how the elite and the everyday found themselves both bound and unbound by these missing days. But before we move on, allow the gentle melody of swaying crops and rustling leaves to settle you further into calm. As winter's hush settles over Britain, frost laces window panes and rooftops glitter in pale morning light. Inside grand townhouses and humble cottages alike, preparations begin for Christmas. Cards arrived, handwritten in flowing script, wreaths woven from evergreen boughs, and plum puddings steeping with dried fruits and warming spices. Yet, in 1752, these cherished customs brush up against the same calendar anomaly that unsettled peasants and parliament alike. Tonight, we explore how the missing 11 days rippled through festive cheer, touching king and commoner, court and cottage, in both gentle and discordant measures. Imagine soaring through the ornate halls of St. James's Palace, where servants in livery glide across polished marble. Candles flicker in crystal sconces, casting dancing patterns on gilded walls. The Christmas season in the royal household is a spectacle of ritual. Sumptuous banquets laid with silver platters, choirs in velvet cassocks singing ancient carols, and the king's own table groaning under roast venison, mince pies, and bowls of spiced wassail. Yet this year, whispers flutter through the corridors. Gentlemen in powdered wigs ask if Christmas Day falls on December 25th, as always, or if it has shifted to December 36th. A date that jolts laughter from some and brow-furrowing among those who tally accounts for seasonal bonuses. Royal clerks, quills poised above parchment ledgers, hesitate before inscribing wages for palace musicians. Will their December salary reflect 11 fewer days of service? A court as Private Chambers explains that the new calendar places Christmas firmly on December 25, but that some minor court entertainments originally scheduled over the lost days must be silently rescheduled. The court herald issues a gentle notice. Royal pageants shall proceed unimpeded, in accordance with the true sun's cycle, and so, within the gilded walls, Christmas remains constant in spirit, even if the surrounding dates shifted beneath it. Drift now into the drawing rooms of country estates, where the gentry exchange polite invitations. Imagine clement warmth inside a stone manor, the hearth fire glowing amber, and portraits of stern ancestors watching from their frames. Footmen deliver invitations announcing a Yuletide gathering on December 25, 1752. Though some hostesses quietly adjust the parchment dates by hand before sealing. At one estate near Oxford, Lady Harrington puzzles over her guest list. She sips a ribbon of claret, its aroma hinting of oak casks, as she contemplates whether to include the parish vicar's sermon on the morning of December 14th, formerly Christmas Eve by the Julian reckoning. She decides instead to hold her carol service on December 24th by the new calendar, trusting that congregants will adapt. In these hushed salons, the missing days become an elegant curiosity rather than a threat. Conversations drift from the frost-kissed landscape to the latest continental fashions, whiskers carved in silk ribbons, and the subtle art of balancing tea leaves for a perfect brew. The calendar change is absorbed into small talk, a footnote to the season's gaiety. Meanwhile, in villages beyond the reach of manor chandeliers, families gather around simple fir trees in humble parlors. The air is filled with the scent of burning pine needles and the warmth of peat fires crackling in hearts. Children don woolen stockings by the chimney, whispering wishes as they drift toward sleep. But questions linger. Will Father Christmas still visit on the 25th? Will pudding be served on the true day or the old one? Some families uncard, in tradition opt to celebrate twice, a small supper on December 13th, and again on the official December 25th. In cottages lit by tallow candles, mothers stir their puddings with patience and smiles, while fathers carve wooden toys in quiet corners, pausing only to listen for the distant ring of sleigh bells carried on winter winds. In one Yorkshire hamlet, the church congregation decides to hold two services, a modest gathering on what would have been the Julian Christmas Eve, and a fuller celebration on the new calendar's Christmas Day. Imagine the soft hymn sung once under low winter clouds, again beneath a pale winter sun going across frost-covered fields. In their dual observance, villagers reclaim the lost days as moments of grace, weaving paradox into their Yuletide tapestry. From candlelit courts to straw cottages, the missing days are at once disorienting and embraced. Elite and humble alike adapt, some with gentle decree, others with quiet ingenuity, revealing the resilience of human custom. Let the soft glow of festive lanterns and the distant scent of roasting chestnuts linger in your mind. Feel the hush of newly fallen snow cushioning footfalls on village lanes, and the glow of hearth fires warming aged stone walls. As we leave the echoes of merry carols and candlelit feasts, Consider how the simple turning of a page can ripple through every layer of life, royal banquets and humble suppers alike. Soon, we will gather these threads into a calm, conclusive reflection juxtaposing the lost 11 days with the steady march of time that cradles us in the present. We began with the careful calculations of astronomers in starlit towers, followed the murmurs of protest echoing through cobblestone streets, walked beside a farmer in misty fields, and shared in the flickering warmth of Yuletide celebrations. Through it all, 11 days slipped by, in silence yet life's steady pulse endured. Imagine once more that candlelit chamber, the parchment maps resting beneath your fingertips. Feel the gentle hush of history settle around you like a familiar quilt. Time measured by clocks and calendars finds its true meaning in the rhythms of human life, in the sowing of seeds, the tolling of bells, and the glow of festive hearth. Though dates may vanish, the stories we carry remain woven into the fabric of our days. As you drift toward sleep, let the lessons of 1752 remind you that change, even when unsettling, can lead us back to what is most enduring. The comfort of shared traditions, the resilience of communities, and the simple beauty of nature's cycles. Allow your breath to fall into the gentle cadence of a grandfather clock's pendulum. Inhale and exhale. In the quiet aftermath of lost days, we find that time itself is a gift not counted in numbers alone, but in moments of grace that linger in memory and dream. May your mind wander softly through the fields of history tonight, and may the calm whispers of the past guide you into restful slumber.